All right, so I'm continuing with the discussion of inheritance, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the substitution principle. Okay, so if you'll recall in the last video, we had this person class that had a name, ID, and age, and it had a couple of constructors, and it had getters and setters. Okay, and it had this toString. There's the toString. Okay, and then we created this employee class that extends person. So this is our employee is now our subclass. Okay, and this added another field called department, and with the getter and setter for that department. And then in our implementation class, you'll notice that we created an employee. We called the set name, set ID, and set age, which were defined in the person class. And then we called the set department that was defined in the employee class. Okay, so one of the things that is interesting about Java is because employee is related to person in the sense that it extends it, you can actually interchange person and employee in certain cases. So for example, I can, instead of doing employee E1 equals new employee, I can do this. I can do person P1 equals new employee. Okay? Because all employees are actually persons, right? They inherit everything that's in person. Okay? And you'll see that if I compile this, sure enough, it lets me compile it. And I can go through and I can do p1.setName, Fred, p1.setID, 6789. Oh, I guess I better make this an integer. And p1.setAge, 23. Okay, and I can print out P1, and you will see, let me comment out this J option pane so it doesn't distract us. So not only does this compile, but when you run it, it runs and does exactly the same thing, okay? So P1 is actually an employee, okay? But because I'm referring to it this way as a person, I can go ahead and call all these setters and use it the same way I would use it as a person, okay? Now, what you cannot do, okay, if I try to do this, employee E2 equals new person, okay, this will not work. This will not compile because an employee is not necessarily a person in the sense that employee has these extra attributes and methods. And so if I do it this way, the compiler's going to complain at me. Okay, so you will see that I get this incompatible types, person cannot be converted. So in other words, it only works, I can basically, if I have a superclass subclass relationship, I can have the superclass, which is person over here on the left, and I can have that equal to be the superclass or any subclasses over here on the right-hand side, but it does not work the reverse way, okay? So in other words, since employee is a subclass of person, I am not allowed to do this, okay? So I'll just go ahead and put a note in here. Can't do this, compiler error, okay? Now, when later on, we're going to have a lesson about polymorphism, and when we talk about polymorphism, we're going to go into more nuanced details about exactly what this means, okay? But for right now, suffice it to say that this is something that you should be aware of, okay? And there will be cases where it makes sense to do this kind of a thing, but just wanted to give you guys a brief introduction to this idea that in Java, you can do this kind of construction. And this is a little bit weird and different compared to things that we've done in the class so far. Before this, we'd always do person P1 equals new person, or employee E1 equals new employee. And you would never have two separate types in the same line like this. But with inheritance and with superclass subclass relationships, you can do that. Okay, so there will be a couple more videos that go over some other nuances of inheritance.